Oh boy, it's keyboard building time. This video is actually sponsored by KB Defense. KB Defense is a pretty popular Chinese website that sells custom mechanical keyboard parts. They've been growing pretty popular because of how accessible they are. And I completely agree, when I first looked into custom keyboard parts, I thought KB Defense was the easiest to understand because they had all the parts, so you could kind of deduce from there. I'm not paid to make this video, they just sent me the parts for free, so let's get right into it. For today's build, I just went with the KBD75 DIY kit. DIY kits are pretty good for starting out because you don't need to pick the PCB, the case, and the plate. All you need to do is pick the switches, which can be pretty useful if you're a beginner and you're not sure if the parts you bought are compatible with each other. So it's easier for you when a website already has grouped everything together for you. I'll be using the KBD75 DIY kit, and I went with the brass plate, and I didn't go for the brass weight at the back because I didn't realize that was an option until later on, and I don't really think the brass weight would change too much, at least. KB Defense was originally supposed to send me these linear switches, except that they never came in the mail for some reason. Luckily, I already bought some Holy Pandas from a friend for cheap, and he gave them to me all disassembled already, so I didn't have to slowly take them apart with a switch opener. For lubing, I'll be lubing the Holy Pandas with Krytox 205G0. I'll be lubing the legs on the stem because I prefer a smoother feel than a harder tactile bump. Actually, I prefer adding extra lube on my switches because they feel nicer to me, at least. For the keycaps, I'll be using these EPBT keycaps. I know these keycaps look like the cherry profile version of the KBD75 listing. I was pretty surprised when I saw the KBD75 listing. I looked at this last year because I did want to build this last year. Before I was looking for the parts, I actually laid out what kind of keyboard I wanted. I wanted a keyboard that basically looked like an office keyboard where the legends are in a slighter, darker shade of grey or black, and the normal keys are either white or light grey. Then the board has to have a slight underglow, not the entire case glowing, but just a line of underglow. And then when I saw the KBD75 page, I was like, whoa, this is exactly what I wanted. Looks like my mechanical keyboard that's supposed to be custom does not look so custom after all. Holy Pandas are a pretty tactile switch. They are tactile switches. When I felt the Holy Pandas, it was quite an interesting experience feeling the tactile bump right at the top when you press down, instead of at the bottom or just like Cherry MX Browns. And it felt really different from the Topre experience, and if I'm gonna be honest, I kind of prefer Topre's. That feeling of the tactile that was more drawn out and mushy feels nicer, but the Holy Pandas, they sound better. And here's the sound test of the difference between lubed Holy Pandas and unlubed Holy Pandas. So after I spent about 3, 4, 5 hours looping all the switches, I was finally done, and it was time to work on the stabs. It was quite scary because I wasn't sure when I clipped the legs of my stab stabilizers. I'm not sure if it was correct, because what if I accidentally snipped something wrong off? But I imagine a lot of people during the first time they will feel this way. I think the first time I put in my stabs and everything, I didn't put enough Permatex. I was using Permatex for pretty much the entire stab. Yeah, the entire thing I looped with Permatex. I probably should have used Krytox 205G0 for at least the point where the stab is in contact with the housing, but I didn't do that. I just used Permatex the entire thing. I basically didn't use enough lube, and my stabilizers started becoming rattly, and I had even more issues with stabilizers later on that I'll explain. But yeah, I basically didn't put enough lube, and because I didn't want to desolder everything, I basically used my paintbrush and spammed as much Permatex into the stab housing as I could, and that kind of fixed the problem. I got the torque, so it's okay. After that was soldering, which was pretty much the most fun part to me, other than looping the switches. I kind of like doing repetitive, boring tasks. I like doing a lot of nothing but something at the same time. So while putting together the keyboard, I realized that I didn't have enough Holy Pandas for the entire thing, so I decided for at least the F key row I would use red switches. When I was done with soldering everything, it was time to put the board together. I was finally done. So I just took out the case and the plate and everything, and you can see me putting it together here. Except that right after I finished screwing everything in together, I realized that I forgot to put in the foam. So I had to take everything apart again. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I realized that my spacebar wasn't working correctly, and it was because the stabilizer wire popped out of the clips. Oh no! Oh no! The reason why people recommend hot swappable boards for beginners is so that you guys don't have to deal with soldering, or maybe you guys don't have a soldering iron. But basically, whenever you make a mistake with, like, let's say your stabilizers or your stabilizers, you kind of have to desolder the entire board and take all the switches out before you can re-access the stabilizers, because you know the stabilizers is sandwiched between the plate and the PCB, and the switches are on top of the plate. So that kinda, yep, I had to desolder everything. All my life, I have always been terrible at soldering, and that day was the day I found out why I was so terrible at soldering. It was because my soldering irons has always sucked. It was way too hot, and I probably didn't practice good enough soldering practices, and because of that, my board looked like it was ready to burn, and I did end up burning one contact on my board. Basically, any switch after the right Windows key just stopped working, which is fine. I mean, luckily it's not at any other place that's more important, but oh no, my arrow keys. I kinda can't live without arrow keys. At least on my Happy Hacking keyboard, other 60%, the arrow keys are in like some macro layout, which I can program into the KBD75 if I wanted to, but I like the 75% layout because they had arrow keys. So anyone listening out there who hasn't built a keyboard before and are planning to, please learn from mistakes. Don't use a soldering iron that's too hot. Be careful when you're desoldering, you might destroy something. So halfway after desoldering, like maybe half of the board, my spacebar stabilizer managed to pop out of the plate and PCB somehow. So I put back the stabilizer properly, and then I realized that for some reason that the wire would keep popping out of the clip. I had no idea why it just kept coming out. Like, I would put back the keycap onto my stabilizer, press it a few times, and boom, there goes the wire. Now it's rattly and wonky as hell. It just did not work out. It's so strange, and I don't know why my stabilizers are doing this. I wasn't using the kit stabilizers from KBD Fans, from the KBD75. I was using their cherry screw-in stabilizers that I got. Yeah, I still don't know why it was happening. And to fix that, I really did not know what to do. I realized that when I put pressure on the wire on the board, it would stop it from popping out, because I mean there's something holding it back towards the clip. So I came out probably the most cursed idea. So I decided to use a thread and a needle and sew the wire to the PCB, and it actually worked. Except that I still had the rattle issue, which I started spamming my step housing with like Permatex, and it kind of worked. My other stabilizers started showing issues too, like the popping out thing, but I managed to pop them back with like really thin pliers without desoldering the entire board, so thank goodness. And as for the burnt key, I decided to take a risk and tried soldering some contacts together and a wire to another contact. So what I did was that the key that was burnt, I resoldered the switch in that hole to another contact that was essentially the same Windows key, and that made the entire board work. It was like a huge gamble, and my soldering job it looks awful, but I did it as like just to test to see that it probably won't work, and it did work. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put electrical tape over this and pretend I saw nothing. And I mean, if it works, it works, but guys, please learn from me. And then after all that pain, I managed to put the keyboard back together again. And after that, I started realizing other problems with the keyboard, like this key and the N key would not work properly. The N key was working, except that it only actuated half of the time, and the other key felt like it was a hair trigger, like I would touch it and it would send the key. It felt like a touchscreen, which is really weird. I guess my soldering job at the first round and the second round and the third round wasn't perfect, so whenever I felt a key had a problem, I take apart the board and solder. And not to mention, the first time I soldered, that one entire row did not work, and the 9 key also didn't work for some reason. And the 9 key, it worked when I took the board apart, but it didn't work when the board was together. It was really strange, and that was quite a disaster of my first experience. The entire thing took about 22 hours in total. I was awake for basically an entire day, and I would not give up until I finished. I don't want to give up on this. I mean, I know I didn't pay for this, but still. And so that was my keyboard building experience, and here is my keyboard. It is finally done. It was really a pain to do this. It was quite an experience. Did I like it? No. Will I say I liked it after I'm finished with everything? Yes. Do I recommend other people to suffer like I did? Yep. Troubleshooting aside, that experience is actually pretty fun. The whole reason why I went for soldering a board instead of hot swap one is because I feel like soldering is a part of the mechanical keyboard building experience, and I recommend people try. Please go for a cheaper board than I did at least. Even if you fail or make mistakes, it's normal, and I think all of this was just a huge learning experience for me, and hopefully my next board and the rest of my boards will not have this many mistakes. And here's a typing test, and thanks for watching.